This episode of the Citadel Cafe is brought to you by listeners like you. Visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe to find out how you can become a patron and help make this show possible. This is the Citadel Cafe, episode number 408 for Wednesday, July 14th, 2021. My name is Joel Duggan, and the Citadel Cafe is where my friends and I hang out to talk about the geeky stuff that we are into. Joining me this week, Lou Page is back. You can find him at Busy Zombie Lord on all the social media that matters, and of course, hosting Zombies Ate My Podcast with his co-host and friend of the show, Ryan Murphy. Hello, sir. How are you?
Good.
It is summertime, and I am excited because I have new summertime gear. I actually ordered this last week and it arrived before the show last week, but I didn't get a chance to talk about it because Steven and I got into talking about Loki, which Lou and I are going to do again this week. There are thoughts and feelings. But I want to let people know that I picked up the ThermoWorks Smoke X2 long-range remote barbecue alarm thermometer. It's the longest name for a product ever, but basically what this is a nerdy piece of kit that I splurged on for myself because I haven't had a vacation in 4 years, and it's going to allow me to do longer cooks. It's a dual thermometer probe where one probe sits at the grate level in your barbecue. It's got a little clip and it sits about an inch above the barbecue grate, so you know what grate level temperature is at. The other is a meat probe that you stick into the meat. Say like it's a pork shoulder, for like, you know, like a pork butt for pulled pork, or if you're doing like a brisket, which I'm not ready to do yet, but anything that's like a roast or a tenderloin or something that's a big, thick piece of meat that's going to take an hour or more to cook, you want to make sure that you're maintaining temperatures. And being able to do that with a remote alarm means that you're not out in front of the barbecue all the time. And right now, I have another ThermoWorks product. I have a ThermoPen, which is great for testing meat like chicken breasts, steak, hamburgers, like meatballs, because you need to know when they're done. You need to know when they've reached a safe internal temperature. But in order to do that, you have to lift the lid. Not the end of the world. Yeah, not the end of the world on a 20-minute, 30-minute cook for chicken thighs. But when you do that on a big cook, you're losing all that heat. As soon as you lift that lid, you're losing all the heat. There's a fun saying that I've come across in my learning to barbecue adventures has been, if you're looking, you're not cooking, which I actually quite like. So you really do get better results when you kind of set it and forget it. And having a thermometer that has a little cable that goes under the hood is going to keep me from opening things up again. And I wanted to share that with listeners. They're not cheap, but after doing a bunch of research and talking to someone that smokes and has been smoking meat like religiously for several years, he basically said, like, spend the extra money, you will not forget it, because every time he's tried to, we'll say, cheap out and get like an alternative that costs like a third of the price, it also lasts like, you know, a year before something breaks.
I would say anything grilling, it's worth investing the money. Anything grilling, no matter what it is. The when I've cheaped out and bought a cheaper product, it never lasts me more than a year.
Yep.
But if I spend the real money and get it, like for Father's Day this year and my birthday, Erica got me a new grill. And instead of getting like the $100 or $200 grill like I normally would, that only lasts me 2 or 3 years, Erica invested in, we got me a big industrial size grill. In fact, it uses some technology that they only usually use for industrial grills.
Nice.
So, you know, inside of a grill is always going to be gross and dirty. You're never going to get it to look as clean as it is the first time you cook on it.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, I've gotten my money's worth out of this grill already, and it's not, the summer's not even over yet. We had a birthday party for Violet last weekend, and I cooked about 20 hamburgers and 20 hot dogs on it all at once. That's how big the grill is.
Nice.
So it, like, I definitely am getting my money's worth out of it. And the old grill, I never would have been able to do that with.
I do find that surprisingly on a 22-inch kettle, I run out of room. Like I
Yeah,
don't know that I could do 2 full racks of ribs without a rack. Like
yep.
it to keep them indirect, like to have coals on one side. I might be able to do it. Maybe if I cut them in half, I could probably arrange them in a way that would work out. But it's one of those things where I'm only cooking for myself and Laura, and half the time it's just for me. So when I do like 8 chicken thighs, and I did 9 chicken thighs the other night, and that was the max load. And I'm glad that a couple of the chicken thighs were quite small because I can kind of like put them in between
Yep.
themselves. But really 8 would be kind of like a comfortable sort of situation to have coals on both sides, and then your off, your what's not offset cooking. What's it called? Indirect. Your indirect
Yep.
space down the middle of the barbecue. 8 chicken thighs is about what I would do. I might be able to get, if it was baby back ribs, I can get 2. The rack of ribs that I have in the fridge right now is side ribs, so
Yep.
they're quite, and they're uncut, so they're quite large. So that I'm only going to do down the middle, or maybe even just offset. I'm not really sure. But yeah, like with this thing, the moment I opened it up, the first thing I noticed was it's heavy, like really heavy. It's the base of it comes with a stand that sits out by the barbecue, and it will alarm, but it also has a long range remote that you can tether around your neck or stick in an apron pocket, which is what I'm probably going to do. Or if you're streaming on Twitch, stick the alarm right next to you. Also happens to be magnetic. I can probably stick it to the side of my computer case.
Yep.
I don't know. Are we still of the thought that you can't really put magnets on your computer case? That's probably not a good idea.
As long as they're not industrial strength, I think you're okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Either way, there are other metal things around that I can probably stick it to. It also stands up quite nicely on its own. It's about probably 3/4 of an inch wide at the base. So they're both really heavy. And I wonder how strong these magnets are. I mean, the full thing, it's about the size of a Game Boy. It's a little bit squat, but if you're looking at an
Yep.
old NES Game Boy, it's about that size. And I held it up to the fridge, and it actually left my hand and attached itself to the fridge. So the magnets are pretty good.
Yeah, then I wouldn't attach it to your computer. You might screw up your RAM or your hard drive.
Hard drive, yeah. So I'll leave that for something else. But either way, it's pretty cool. And another selling point was, again, despite the price, and this is something that my friend Chris also said, was sorry, Jeff, not Chris. Jeff said that a lot of these other things, they're kind of like all in one. So if it fails, the whole thing is done. There is over time some wear and tear that will happen to the probes, in particular the probe cords. As you can expect, these things are being pinched by the barbecue lid, and like they're under hot
Yep.
temperatures and whatnot. They're guaranteed up to like 700 degrees Fahrenheit, but like every once in a while you might have like an accident. Anyway, ThermoWorks sells the probe separately, so you don't have to rebuy the whole unit. You can just rebuy the probe if a probe
Yep.
fails.
I have a one for my oven, and it says that I can use it on the grill, but I can tell you from personal experience, my new grill, I've had the temp in it up over 700 degrees, not intentionally,
Yeah,
and I've been like, yeah, no, I'm not putting that probe in that grill.
yeah. Well,
Instead, I have a hand one that I go out and I stick it in, and it tells me the temp immediately, and
nice.
that's usually what I use when I grill.
Yeah, so I've got something similar. I've got like a hand thermometer.
Yep.
If you decide to invest in something like this, I would say one, you're going to have an easier time because it's an American company. So I had to pay
Yep.
American dollars for it, so it was a little bit more for me. However, also I picked things up on sale. I will say ThermoWorks, they seem like a very good company. They seem to do a lot of really good customer service things. They were, asking me how things were, all that kind of stuff. The issue that I have is that they send newsletters about once a day. So
Yep.
we're,
All companies do that now.
yeah, well, it's worth signing up for close to a holiday because I got 20% off over the July 4th weekend, which is, of course, a big barbecue season. It's a big barbecue event for a lot of people. So if you're looking to pick something up like this, if you can wait until like maybe Labor Day later in the summer, Christmas, gifts, anytime there's like Father's Day, July 4th, like anything like that, they seem to have a sale. And it was, I picked up the ThermoPen for 30% off. So there's definitely ways that you can get the stuff on sale from ThermoWorks, which is nice. Not a sponsored podcast. I just have been very impressed outside of the crazy amount of newsletters, which I mean, I turned it off after I was done buying what I needed to. So it's not a big deal. They seem to be a really stand-up company. I've seen a lot of people that I follow on YouTube, and I'm pretty picky about people that I follow on YouTube in terms of personalities and content. And the 2 or 3 people that I follow for barbecue and smoking tutorials on YouTube, all seem to use ThermoWorks products. And a lot of times they say, look, I've used other stuff. And yes, there's an affiliate link below the video, but I'm telling you, just save yourself the time and get yourself one of these. And I've heard the same thing about the Weber kettle. They're just like, there's lots of other kettles out there. If you want it to last more than 2 years, just spend the extra $50 or $60. You know, for Canadians, it's more like $100 and get a Weber kettle. Now, the thing that I find really irky, I'm trying not to think about, is that I think I have spent about the same amount of money on the 2 thermometers that I own that I did for the entire barbecue. So that's a little bit weird. But as you mentioned, I can use this cooking alarm in the kitchen. Like I could easily set it on the stove, run the cable inside the stove. The stove is not going to get up past 350 or 400, you know, for anything that I'm roasting. Sorry, not the stove top, but like the oven is not going to get that hot. Which means that I could cook a turkey, I could cook a roast beef, I could do anything I want in the oven, and I could easily maintain not only like the temperature of the meat, but I could stick the probe on the oven rack and actually get a real-time temperature, like by how close is my oven temp on the display to what's actually happening inside, how much does it fluctuate. So that's going to be interesting come this winter when I cook a little bit more inside. Honestly, I might cook just as much outside this winter too, because my balcony is not that big. But anyway, that's the food-driven human nerd talk for the start of the show. The other quick anecdote is that I had a flood in my sink. Yay, not yay. Had to, nothing crazy. I caught it when it happened, so it's not like it was happening for a long time and causing a lot of problems. When I found the water going down behind my counter and into my cupboard, also yay, it was all fresh, like it wasn't moldy, you know, like it was just like this happened like today. So I had to clean out my cupboard, which I don't often do because I don't have fancy drawers and swing out cupboards and lazy Susans. It's just these deep, dark cupboards that you just don't use much. Anyway, I found my roasting pan, which I've had for a long time. And then as I was cleaning everything, because of course everything got wet and it was dusty, so it got kind of gross and I had to wash it all off. I was cleaning the turkey rack that you put in the roasting pan so that the turkey doesn't sit directly on the bottom. And when I turned the turkey rack upside down to dry it on the rack, I looked at it and went, that looks like a rib rack. And I bet I haven't done the test yet because it's a pretty big rib rack, because the rib racks I've seen from Weber, which are only $20, seem to be a little bit smaller, but I'm pretty sure that this will fit on the Weber. And if it's meant to be in a turkey roaster, I'm sure it can withstand the 220 degrees that I would cook ribs at, you know, on the Weber kettle. So I might be able to cook like 4 racks of ribs and not have to buy a rib rack. So I guess a win despite the flood. I don't know.
Hey, if it saves you a few bucks, then it's a win.
Yeah, I would say. Speaking of saving a few dollars, moving on into the main discussion this week. I think I mentioned this last week as something that I picked up, but I want to say that I have played now for 3 or 4 hours in a game called Before We Leave from Balancing Monkey Games. I picked it up on Steam. It was on sale. It's no longer on sale since the Steam summer sale is over. But you can pick it up on both Steam and Epic Games. And if you decide to pick it up on Epic Games, I have an affiliate link. I don't mention this often on the show. I usually mention it more on my Twitch channel. But I'm part of the affiliate program on Epic Games. If Epic Games is a place where you do like to buy games, there will be a link in the show notes for this podcast to the Before We Leave game that is an affiliate link. Or if you're buying any game on Epic Games, you can just use Joel Duggan, all one word, at checkout. It's not going to cost you anything extra. And depending on the game, Epic Games will actually give me a little bit of a kickback that helps supports the podcast, my streaming, and basically any kind of content that I produce. You're going to buy the game anyway, and you get to help me out in the process. So full disclosure, you know, just wanted to let people know that that's out there. I really enjoyed the time that I had with Before We Leave. Have you heard about this, Lou? Have you seen it at all?
I had not, but I saw that you were playing this the other day, and I had to look it up and go. I was like, what is Before We Leave? I've never heard of this. I need to track it down. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, it's a city builder. Okay.
Yeah. So they describe it as a non-violent city builder. So a lot of modern city builders, unless it's like city skylines, have some sort of combat or some sort of like risk involved. And this is from a New Zealand developer. And to quote their website, we create non-violent games that aim to relax and entertain our players while building a positive and uplifting community that reflects our ideals. And I think that's pretty true of Before We Leave. The object of the game, or the setup, which I didn't know until I actually started playing and went through the tutorial, is that you're on a planet. It's not Earth, but it's Earth-like. And after a global environmental apocalypse, everybody has been underground for just ages. And so you start off with this little metal bunker, and like one or two people come out. And your mission is to help them develop their area so that then more and more people can come out from underground and survive on the surface. And so there's a couple of different things that you can do. You can build farms, you can build houses to get started, and then you can start harvesting things like trees. You can put down a lumberjack, you can put down a mine. You can do all these different things. And as you do that, you want to increase your population. But instead of breeding, people just come out of the ground because there's just more people in the ground, but you can't sustain them until you have the infrastructure on the surface. And
Gotcha.
there's no bad guys. There's nothing will kill your people. The only thing that happens that's a detriment is that your peeps, as they're called in the game, are affected by the environment. So they will be unhappy if they're next to, say, the smelter that's belting out a bunch of smog and pollution. And it's not like the end of the world. It's just like there's an area of hexagonal tiles that are designated as this building will create this much pollution. And then you have to kind of upgrade your technology and move throughout, the development of the game as you expand and explore and find new things. And one of the things that you can collect is technology, and you mine the technology from the past civilization. So it's set kind of like in the distant future where, you can see these ruins of like glowing green stuff, and it looks kind of like any kind of sci-fi, kind of glowing red, glowing green power that you've ever seen. Sometimes it looks like there might be the remnants of a robot kind of like strewn around on the ground. And you can use those tiles to mine technology. And that technology ends up being your currency that you use to then research. So you have to spend 20 green technology to research vegetable farming to broaden your, diet of potatoes, right? So you get into carrots and pumpkins, and then you can eventually, I think, get into livestock. And it seems to be a really in-depth game. We play the tutorial live on stream on Twitch. I'll have a link to that VOD in the show notes as well. And it was pretty good. I have to say the tutorial was fun. It kind of got you used to the game and explained how things worked. It wasn't very good at explaining the UI. So some of that was a little bit non-intuitive and took a bit of kind of clicking around to explain. But the game theory was all explained to you. Things like, hey, take a look at this stat on a house. You'll notice that buildings have benefits and detractors. So if you put potatoes too close to pollution, they don't grow very fast. Okay, that makes sense. If you put houses next to one another, then the normal occupancy of 2 people per house becomes 3 people per house. The more houses that you connect, the more people that they can have inside. So with the hexagonal layout of the tiles, think like Carcassonne or Settlers of Catan, it becomes this really interesting strategy puzzle game of like, where do my roads go? Because all buildings have to touch a road. And then how can I arrange it so that my well and my potatoes and my houses are all benefiting from what they need to be next to? Potatoes excel next to wells and are harvested faster when next to houses. Houses will house more people when they're next to more houses, and people will be happier when they're far away from pollution. So like there's all these different things that you kind of have to balance. And it was really fun. Like I really enjoyed the vibe of it. I had to adjust the sound sliders quite a bit. I found that it was one of those things. You ever had a game where like you try to change the volume and nothing seems to happen until you get below 10%?
Yep.
Yeah. So the game suffers from that. When you're too close to the ground, as you move your camera around, you can kind of hear the murmurings of what's going on. So if you're close to a mine, you'll hear the mining noises. If you're close to a house, you'll hear like kind of like tables and chairs moving and glasses clinking and stuff like that. So that can be a little bit loud, at least for me when I'm streaming and trying to talk over everything. But other than that, like I really found everything was pretty straightforward. The only detractors that I'll say so far, and I mean, it's going to get more of my time, is that the camera controls are pretty good, but because the planet is so small, like when you zoom out on this map, you can see the curvature of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're spinning the camera around and you're too close, like it really makes you dizzy. It's akin to looking at the ground when you're driving on the highway. Like it really kind of gets you out of sorts. So after 3 or 4 hours, I find myself feeling a little bit seasick. And so I didn't,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and that to me was just like, you go into this with this fast paced tile building. This is really fun, but then you're using that same speed as you're kind of navigating the menus and clicking around. So I feel like in a lot of ways, my Minecraft play, which is very fast, I need to slow down a bit, because first person, it's fine. But when you're using this map down toggle or camera tool in Before We Leave, it gets very spinny very quickly. So if I have any advice for people that are going to this game, know that there is no time limit. There is no time penalty. There are no bad guys. You're not trying to race to build up a wall to save yourself from the bugs, right? It's just you, your peeps, and a hole in the ground, and they've got all the time in the world. So slow down. And if you slow down your mind and your gameplay, as I did about maybe 2/3 of the way through the stream, you're also going to slow down your camera movements, and it's not going to be quite as herky-jerky and stuff. After a while, you build up a ship, and then you sail to a different island. The different island has different environments, like a desert, or icy sort of situations. So they have different minerals and different things available, different color research. And that is the only detractor that I found in the game. So this isn't a bad thing about the game. It's the only thing that's a negative effect, is outside of pollution, is that your workers will be inefficient in the desert. They'll get too hot if they have to travel too far. So then you have to develop clothing to help shield them, like sun hats or thermal clothing in the winter, so that if they have to travel far across icy terrain, that they'll stay warm and healthy and happy. And that just keeps them operating at the right speed. So it feels like your resource bottlenecks are affected by the environment rather than other obstacles.
Right.
Later on in the tutorial, and I joked about this on the stream, it got to the point where I was reading the encyclopedia. Like the little windows that would pop up with tips would be like 4 or 5 in a row, and it was a book. And I found it overwhelming. So at a certain point, you might want to turn the tutorial off. The issue is that they said that once you turn it off, you can't turn it back on again, which to me seems really dumb. I'd like to turn it off until I get stuck, and then I wouldn't mind turning it back on again. I'm not a stranger to city builders. So when I was going through the tutorial, there was a number of things where I was just like, well, I've got 180 of this green research built up. I'd like to research vegetable gardens. And I wasn't able to do it. And it was because the tutorial hadn't told me to do it yet. I still had to build like 3 houses or something on their checklist. So if you're used to these kind of games, you may want to turn the tutorial off a little bit faster. But the problem with that is that later on, there's things like shipping lanes and like happiness and all these other things that come into effect. And it's like, I wouldn't know what to do with those if the tutorial didn't tell me. So it's one of these weird things where the tutorial is good and essential, but then there's nothing in the UI for anybody that doesn't play the tutorial to really indicate how to do this. So then you'd be left watching YouTube videos about how to play this game. So I feel like balancing monkey games need to have a little bit more of a balance, if you pardon the pun, between their tutorial and the intuitive nature of their UI. Or just have more like hover over pop-ups. Like if you hover over a button, it should pop up and say, this will tell you this will tell you that. Look at these buttons to go here. When you get into the later game, they start talking a lot about peep happiness and also shipping lanes. And I don't want to manage spreadsheets. That's not why I play this kind of a game. It's a beautiful game. Like
that's where I draw the line. I know people who do that with like spreadsheets and stuff, and as soon as I get a game where they're like, "Oh, you just need to create a spreadsheet," no, you lost me. You've lost me.
And that's what this feels like. There's happiness graphs. There's the research. Well, the research tree is fine, but the happiness graphs and the shipping lanes, like it's just spreadsheet management inside of a video game. And that's not why I play City Builders. I play City Builders to do cool stuff. Now, I understand that City Skylines has things like taxes and you have to manage your fire um, not protection, but your fire coverage. Like you have to have so many fire stations per area because they can't travel across town in time to stop fires, that kind of thing.
Yep.
That kind of stuff I get. Any kind of graphical overlay, I'm on board. Like I can see, and Before We Leave has it. You can see pollution, you can see happiness, you can see efficiency, you can see agricultural areas versus industrial areas. Like you can see all that kind of stuff. That's fine. But then when we get into these happiness graphs, not only are they uninteresting, but the peeps are so small and so fast moving and have so little personality that you just don't give two shits about them. So I'm not going to spend any time staring at a spreadsheet of graphs to make one peep happier than the others because they're not happy with where they live. Don't care.
Yeah.
If you want something like that, Oxygen Not Included does a much better job of connecting you personally with the little duplicants. They all look cute and fun. They have funny animations. If someone's got an upset stomach, they walk around holding their gut like they're going to fall over. Like Oxygen Not Included is a much better colony simulator so far than Before We Leave. Oxygen Not Included is a very different builder in terms of that it's 2D and you're building kind of like an ant farm as opposed to a city down, top down 3D thing. So they have their own strengths, but I feel like Before We Leave should I wish it would decide what it wants to be. In what feels like the late game, you're going to be managing a lot of happiness and stuff. I don't know if you can just ignore that and just deal with the production rates as they are and just enjoy the city building nature of it. I haven't really gotten that far yet. So Before We Leave, we'll get more of my time, but there are some things about it that I can already tell I'm just not going to bother with because one, it's not interesting to me. And two, I'm probably going to share this content on Twitch, and I don't find staring at happiness graphs to be engaging content, as far as a content creator. So, because I don't have a webcam, like I don't sit there and just do Let's Chat. So if you really wanted a chill, time, you could totally do that. But I really feel like I'm probably going to be exploring more of the visuals. I mean, I'm an artist. I like creating things. That's what's going on with this. So yeah, that's how I'm going to roll. When it comes to city builders, like are there any ones that you like, or are these in the genre where you kind of check out?
It's touch and go. Like I love the Civ games, but somewhere usually between turn 1 and 503, I'm like, all right, I'm done with this game for a while. I like city builders. I played a lot of them as a kid, but as an adult, I don't find them as interesting as I used to. Um, I was looking it up while you were talking because what you were talking about reminded me where there was no combat. Reminded me of another game that came out in 2014 called Banished, and it's a city builder, but there's no combat. It's all about you're a bunch of people that have decided to leave and go start a village in a new land because you were exiled, and the game cycles through seasons. So in the early part of the game, it's like spring, and so you've got to get the crops growing and get enough farms so that you can keep your people surviving through the winter. And then you've got to have enough hunters to hunt food during the winter so that you can keep your people alive. And there's no combat, but there is a dangerousness of the game, and the whole concept is to just basically keep your people fed and alive. And then eventually later on in the game, I've never played it enough to get too far into it, but eventually you can get traders, and then traders come to town, and you can trade them for other goods and services. And there's never any money involved in the game. It's just resources to help you keep your people from dying.
Have you heard of Foundation?
I have, but I've never played it.
It looks very similar to Banished. Like I just looked up Banished on Steam right now, and it looks like it's
Yeah.
a very similar sort of game. The reason why I've never pulled the trigger on Foundation is because it doesn't seem to go on sale, and $35 is just a little bit more than I'm willing to pay for that
Yep.
kind of experience. Which is why I picked up Before We Leave, because it looked like it was a lower time investment. It looked like it was a quicker play style, and it was
Yep.
sub $20. Even regular price I think is sub $20.
That's the sticker for me is I don't love these types of games, but they got to be sub $20 for me to even consider buying them. That's why I haven't played it yet, but I did pick up Oxygen Not Included. You mentioned it.
Nice.
I I picked it up. I haven't played it yet, but one of the reasons I picked it up is that game rarely ever goes on sale, and when it does, they knock like $3 off, and I got it for under 10.
Yes.
And I was like, I was like, this is something that I'm willing to risk under $10 for, but I'm not willing to risk like $30 for.
I'd have to look up. I don't remember if I downloaded the VODs before they disappeared on Twitch, but I want to say that I got 6 or 7 streams that have oxygen not included. So you're talking 30 hours for the same
Yep.
idea. I picked it up over the Boxing Day sales, like the holiday sales. I think Steam calls it the winter sale.
Yep.
I picked it up for, again, sub 15 for sure, which is probably, the difference between Canadian and US pricing on Steam. But it's worth it. If you got it for under $10, like that is worth even for the 1-2 hour play session, like you're going to enjoy
Yep.
yourself. If nothing
Yep.
else, it's just charming and wonderful. I did find Oxygen Not Included a little bit hard the first time out. Like there's a lot of stuff that will kind of not pigeonhole, but like cramp your colony development if you don't know or don't play enough of these games. I'll
Yep.
give a shout out to a creator that I follow, Max the Catfish on YouTube. He recently posted a kind of how to on Oxygen Not Included. So I would say play it. And if you get frustrated, watch his how to, because he kind of gives you a really good base of like, look, this is how you set yourself up for success to avoid these kind of frustrations that get early players to then bail and never come back. And he's like, if you can
Right.
get past this hump, some people can get past it intuitively, and some people it's just like the game is just not quite, and like they don't quite get it, or they get frustrated with it and they're like, I'll get to it later, and then they never come back. But he's got some really good content on it, and when he streams Oxygen Not Included, he is a very chill stream, and he gets really invested in the personalities and like who the duplicates are, and you don't have to do that, but it's funny for to watch how he goes through it and stuff like that. But I, as a designer, as an artist, I love Oxygen Not Included. Like if I was to make a video game, that would be the kind of job that I would want, would be like, Joel, you're going to create assets for this game that needs everything hand drawn, from the outhouses to the scientific crops, like to everything needs to be cartoony and weird. I was like, I am
Yep.
on board. And that's why I like things like Before We Leave. Banish looks cool. Foundation also looks cool. Not because I necessarily always bring everything back to Minecraft, but it's a nice break from Minecraft. It's a nice break to build a house and not have to build it block by block. And I
Yeah.
also get inspired. Like the randomness that, like, you can't control everything in these games. Like with Before We Leave, you're stuck with this hexagonal layout, which means that your roads have to go in specific, really weird spiral patterns. But it sort
Right.
of gives you like this idea of like, well, everything in Minecraft is so grid-like. What if I took my latest playthrough of Before We Leave and tried to translate that into Minecraft and make it kind of like a cool looking game. This week, speaking of Minecraft, on the Render Distance, which is the extended version of the Spawn Chunks podcast, Pixel Riffs brought up Dorf Romantic. Have you heard this game?
No, I
So
don't think so.
it's a city builder, sort of. It's a puzzle game. And so think about it like a hexagonal tile game where you have to line up the pieces of this hexagonal chit. And it has a river on one side or two sides, a forest on the other, and farmland on the other. And as you rotate it, you can kind of build this little community, and you get points every time you put down and match up the sides. As you get points, you get more pieces. The game is over when you run out of tiles. So the idea is to play as long as you can and constantly be giving yourself more tiles. And his brother-in-law was playing it, and he was saying that it was really cool inspiration for something like a Minecraft or other creative city build, because the randomness, you're kind of forced to use the next tile in your hand, and you have to kind of lay them as you're dealt them. But because of the hexagonal layout, everything kind of comes out kind of sideways. Like it's not as neat and tidy as it would be if you were allowed to make a grid,
Right. Right.
But I'll throw that out there for people that are looking for something else. Also, what is it on Steam? It is $11.49 Canadian, which means it's probably sub $10 US.
Yep.
So moving on into Loki, the season 1 finale on Disney Plus. Huge spoilers. Obviously, Lou and I cannot talk about this without spoiling things for you if you have been keeping up. Chances are, though, if you've been keeping up, you've probably already seen it. Lou, what did you think of the season 1 finale?
I really enjoyed it. I think overall I enjoyed Loki probably more than you did.
I think you are correct, sir, which is why we're starting
Yes.
with you in the positivity.
Yeah. I mean, I viewed this as I knew that it was going to be 6 episodes. I knew it was going to lead into something. I just knew that at the end of this, it has to tie into a movie. All their shows have tied into a movie. I mean, Falcon and the Winter Soldier ended, and it's now Falcon is Captain America, and they've already said that they're working on a new Captain America movie with him as Captain America, and that's cool. WandaVision ended, and it was like it's gonna continue in Doctor Strange in the multiverse of madness, and he ended. My exact thoughts were, "Oh, this is gonna tie straight into Ant-Man." And if that doesn't make any sense to you, that's because you don't know who the villain is at the end.
Which I don't.
Uh,
It's purple
okay,
bathrobe guy, right?
okay.
That's his
So
name.
he calls himself He Who Remains, but in the comic book, his character is known as Kang the Conqueror.
Oh, it is Kang. Okay.
Yep. That actor was cast as Kang in the new Ant-Man movie, and that was announced like maybe 6, 7 months ago. And so my theory going into this finale, because I especially liked not necessarily this episode. This episode was fine, not my favorite episode of the season. I really liked the last episode where they were like taming the monster thing to get through the gate to get to where they are in this episode. And this episode ended, and I looked at Erica, not this one, but the last one ended, and I looked at Erica and I said, one of two things is going to happen. They're going to go through this gate, and there's going to be another Loki, or they're going to meet Kang the Conqueror. And she goes, who? And I go, remember when we watched the animated series for a while that was the Avengers? There's that time traveling. And she's like, oh, that guy. I said, yeah, that's who's probably on the other end of this, is it's going to be Kang the Conqueror. And then lo and behold, as soon as I saw that actor, and they never call him Kang the Conqueror, but I was like, that's the actor that's been cast as Kang the Conqueror in the new Ant-Man movie. So I think we're leading him into being our new big villain.
Which is strange to me, because Thanos like was the big villain for so many movies, even though indirectly.
Yeah.
And certainly for like your main heroes, as the as the Avengers move forward. The thing that I forgot, since you mentioned Ant-Man though, was how crucial Ant-Man and Pym particles were in Endgame in terms of
Yes.
time travel, right? So time works differently in the quantum realm, right? Like that just kind of sparked into my brain just now. I hadn't even thought about Ant-Man the entire time I've been watching the TVA and Loki do their thing on
Right.
Disney Plus. So that's really interesting, and I can understand a little bit as to why they put him in a purple bathrobe, because the character is, purple and green 70s jumpsuit. I'm not even sure what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and he has this weird helmet thing, and his face is kind of weird looking.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope they don't do that. I hope he's just a dude. And that's kind of what they did with him, and I was okay with that.
I'm okay with that, but I feel like if you're going to be called Kang the Conqueror, and if you want to rival Thanos as a villain, I feel like you need something sci-fi.
I think now that his character is, well, spoiler, at the end of this episode, Sylvie stabs him and kills him, and that's when you realize things have changed. Um, I think when we meet the new version of him, the new version of him is going to be scary.
Right. Yeah. There. I mean, because he says that he like there's
Yeah,
multiple
and
people.
that I'm the nice one is basically what he tells them.
Yeah. Jonathan Majors, who plays him
Yep.
in the show, did a really good job. I mean, I have my issues with the show, and I certainly have my issues with the final episode, but for all of the dialogue that he has and the psychosis that would go along with knowing everything at the end of time and having previously dealt with multiple universes of yourself, not all of whom were nice people, right?
Right.
I thought he portrayed like the level of I know everything, so nothing matters, but I'm also batshit crazy. Kind of like
Yeah.
it's a delicate line to watch, like to walk. You can go
The, the,
you can go
uh,
overboard, and he didn't.
I like the moment where they're having a conversation with him, and Loki's like, "What if he's lying?" And she's like, "What if he's lying?" And they're bickering because they're trying to figure out if one of them is lying, if they kill him, is it the right thing? If it's the wrong thing, what are they gonna do? And at one point, he looks at them. And he goes, "Oh, we've crossed the threshold." And they both look at each other like, "What the hell is he talking about?" And he goes, "So I was lying earlier. I don't know how all of this is gonna end, but I knew how everything was gonna go until this point. And now we're at the threshold. Now this is new. I don't know what's gonna happen." And it was like you could see that like he was excited that he didn't know what was gonna happen.
Because he's a scientist, right? Like that. And when he described himself as I started off as just a regular one of the variants in a different universe, and I discovered that these multiple universes existed. Like I was a scientist in the 31st century working on XYZ. So the idea of not knowing and the pursuit of knowledge is something that excites him even at this stage, right?
Yeah. And the interesting thing is in the comic books, what you end up finding out in one of the many, many, many comic books of you know how complicated the comic book universe
Mm-hmm.
is at one point you find out that Kang is a descendant of Mr. Fantastic and Sue Storm.
Oh, okay.
So my theory is I think this is going to somehow tie into Ant-Man. I don't think they're going to necessarily beat him in Ant-Man, but he's going to get introduced to the rest of the Marvel universe in Ant-Man as one of the overarching villains coming. And I have a funny feeling somehow Fantastic Four might get tied into this fight with him.
Yeah. So if he's a descendant of Sue Storm, and is it Richard? No, what's the guy's name?
Reed Richards,
Reed
yeah.
Richards. Then
Or at least he is in the comic book.
right.
So
Yeah. I mean, I could see them pulling on that thread and kind of like setting him up to be, and setting up the emotional battle of like, the Fantastic Four having to fight a villain that happens to be their descendant, which is, weird.
yeah,
Like if there's any kind of, not that they would have any kind of emotional connection, but like it would be a strange thing. It would be like fighting yourself, like if you've got a situation where in order to save the day, you have to kill your future self. Like that kind of stuff would be strange for a character to go through. I was a little bit underwhelmed by his presentation physically in the encounter with Loki and Sylvie. But at the end of the season 1 finale, to skip ahead, they show him replacing the 3 figures that were the Time Lords, and then it's just a sculpture of him that's running that's at the TVA in like that center hub thing. And the outfit that he's got on is a lot closer to the outfit that he wears in the comics from what I can see of a couple of screenshots here. And that to me is like, it's still a dude. He's still an actor. He's not under a lot of makeup. He's not a CGI person like Thanos was. Not that, I mean, Thanos, the acting that is it Josh, what's his last name?
It's
Brolin.
Josh Brolin. Yeah.
I mean, the acting that he did comes through in Thanos. It's fantastic. But it's nice that they're not, they're giving an actor an opportunity to not be behind the digital and just be forefront. Because I mean, it would be it would be on par with, Marvel if he was a big or an alien animated character. But like instead of a big purple dude at the end of Avengers, you'd have a big blue dude at the end of Ant-Man. So like I get that they kind of want to steer clear of that. But again, like the outfit and the armor that he has on is just enough of a sci-fi, twist that it's like, okay, sure, I'm on board. He looks powerful, but the weird flowy bathrobe thing that he had didn't really seem to do it for me in terms of like the guy doesn't feel like a threat at all. But I guess that's the point, is that he isn't. It's his variant that would be.
It's going to be the threat.
Yeah. But then again, like if that's the threat, then like how are there not multiple threats? Like this, and this is where my major issue with Loki, as far as the timeline and the TVA and everything kind of starts to fall apart, is because you're dealing with an infinite number of universes with an infinite number of threats, and it's just insurmountable, and it just becomes a lot of noise to the point where it doesn't matter. Like the amount of time that they wasted in the final episode of three characters sitting around saying, "You're lying. No, I'm not. Trust me. I can't." Like it was the same conversation that took 3 minutes for 35 minutes. They
The
did it
only
10
the
times.
only thing I will say is her character didn't grow. Her
No.
character is still, she was determined to get her revenge, and she got her revenge, and I think we'll see her character's arc change over the next one, the next, if going into season 2. I think we'll see her change, where if she had to do it all over again, she's going to realize she might have made a mistake of some kind,
See, I hope
and
she's not in it.
she will be.
Damn it. Because
Yeah.
here's the thing. And again, no shade at Sophia de Martino. I think that her character was written into a corner, and
Yeah.
she was the worst thing about this season. It was flat. I knew everything she was going to say and everything she was going to do 10 minutes before they did it. And to illustrate it, it happened a number of times in this episode where He Who Remains says, "Have you wondered why you can't kill me? I know everything. I know everything that's about to happen." And I'm thinking in my head, nope, she can't kill you because before she stabs you, she says, "I'm going to stab you." It's like, well, no freaking wonder he gets out of the way. You told him you were going to stab him. Like, it's terrible. The writing for her is awful. The only thing interesting that comes out of her character is her relationship with Loki. And it's not that I think that they have a good relationship. I think that they botched it when they made it romantic. What I think is that Loki just wants a friend.
Yeah.
Not a girlfriend, a friend. And I think he had that, and then he realizes that he lost it in the duality of she can't trust anyone and he can't be trusted because he's the god of mischief. And
Right.
And I think that was a nice setup for the tragic story that is Loki, because Loki's not going to have a happy ending. That's not how Loki works. And
Right.
that's not what drives him. And I feel like they did a really good job of illustrating that. Where it drops out for me is where they make it romantic, because nothing about her one-note character at all has the intelligence to have someone as clever as Loki fall for her. That was broken for me.
I have to say, I was not crazy about the romantic interest, but them being buddies was okay with me. I was like, that's a cool idea.
Yes.
He's now met the female counterpart of him, and they've realized that they work better together than they do apart.
Or the sibling that he wanted in Thor that he couldn't get.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And so the moment that they do the romantic kiss on screen, it was no different than Kylo Ren and gosh, I'm blanking on her name, Daisy Ridley, Rey, kissing on screen. I was like, nope, lost me. Don't care. It wasn't worth it. Never saw it. Should never have happened. The same thing here. Like the kiss to make it romantic, that's the only thing that says this is a romantic thing, is because the script says we kiss. That's it. Nothing else about it at all through all of their relationships seemed romantic at all.
I would agree with you on that. My only other thing too is I'm not a huge Kang fan, so the fact that he's going to be our new villain, I think it's going to change the way we see the next few movies, depending on who the other villains are in the next few movies. Since we're now dealing with a multiverse, I definitely think this is going to affect Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I think there's no way that this isn't some way tied to what happened at the end of WandaVision.
Yeah, I wonder. See, the thing that I saw circulating, I try to avoid spoilers when I could, but once I finished watching episode 5 of Loki last week, and some of the people I follow on TikTok are like Marvel, that's their shtick on TikTok, is like they report on Marvel stuff, and they were throwing out Doctor Doom as one of the potential people behind the curtain, at the Wizard of Oz. The end of time.
No way.
And no, I agree too. Like I think that would be too powerful. But Doctor Doom is.
I even heard somebody talking about. when WandaVision was happening, everybody was saying it's Mephisto, it's Mephisto, it's Mephisto, and then I saw somebody else there was some guy on YouTube that was putting up videos, and he's like, "I'm telling you all, it's Mephisto this time," and I'm like, "I'll believe Mephisto is walking onto a Marvel set when they announce the actor that's playing him. They're not gonna blindside us with somebody we don't know who it is."
Yeah. But to me, like, Doctor Doom has got the cool factor. Like, Thanos has got the physical threat and the cool factor.
Yeah,
This guy, this Kang guy, not so much. Now, I'm not a big comic reader for the Marvel stuff. Ant-Man certainly wasn't a comic that crossed my table. So I could be wrong, and I'd be happy to be proven wrong. I certainly have faith in Marvel films. They've been on shaky ground with the television shows. So far, I'm 1 for 3. I loved Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Had some problems, but still very, very good show. And good characters and good character development. Whereas WandaVision made me excited for what's coming after. It didn't necessarily excite me during it. And
yeah,
then this, I was just like, oh God. The thing that I don't like about Loki is that despite the fact that it's a well-produced show, I don't like that kind of writing and the plot hole loops of time loops and reset everything and anything is everything because the script says so, because we can. Because when you're dealing with something as fluid as time, like, there's just no rules. And it
yeah.
really lets
There's too many plot holes.
Yeah, exactly. You just have to trust that this is the way it goes, which they don't give you enough because they can't, for you to be won over as an audience member. It's
Yeah,
it's like the finite situation of something like Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park works because there's one thing that happened. We cloned dinosaurs. Like, that's it. That's the only leap you're asking the audience to make. Whereas in Loki, there's a couple hundred leaps every time you watch an episode. Like, that's an exaggeration, but there's a lot to ask. And I think people just tune out because it's like, I don't know where to put my stock. It's the same
yeah,
way. It's the same issue that you have with Loki, Sylvie, and Trust, and the curtain behind the curtain in the show is that you as the viewer don't know how they're going to run the show because there's just so few rules. You're just like, well, I don't know where to invest. I'm not at the edge of my seat because, like, do I even have a seat? Like, it just gets existential so fast.
well,
And
the only thing I'll say, the thing I did enjoy the most, is that I think Tom Hiddleston's character, eh, he had a character arc by the end of Thor Ragnarok, and dying at fighting, trying to stab Thanos, right?
Mhm.
And where he had come from being a villain to sort of being an anti-hero.
Right.
And when this episode, the first episode of this begins, he's clearly a villain. And by the end of this, when he gets back to the TVA and he looks at Morbius, and he says something about, well, we got to go do this other thing. And he goes, who are you? Which agent are you? And you could see this look where he's gone full circle. He's not the villain that this episode began, that the series began with. His character arc is he did the whole Thor Ragnarok thing again. His character arc where he's now a hero, and now he's like, how am I going to fix this?
He did it within the TV, like within the series.
Yeah, within the series.
Yeah. So no matter which way you pluck Loki from his event, which was New York, I think. I can't
Yeah,
remember which.
yeah, he was plucked in New York.
No, he was plucked when he got the Tesseract.
Yeah, at the end of the New York battle.
Right. But it's not that if he gets captured and sent back to Asgard, that's fine. It's the Tesseract thing that was the trimming point.
Yes.
So, like, one of the major things that happens in Loki timelines when Loki Prime, for the lack of a better term for him, gets pruned is if he wins in New York, or if he gets his hands on the Tesseract and just becomes that kind of powerful, they have to, like, prune him because he's not supposed to win, right? Lokis don't win. They say that a number of times in the show. I agree with you that I think that the character arc there is nice and that it mirrors what happened with, like, Ragnarok and Endgame. The problem that I have with that for the show for season 2, I am not interested in watching Morbius and Loki do the dance of getting to know one another again. because they decided to reset the timeline. Like, one of two things happens in timeline stories: either things get reset or there's a time loop. And I called time loop / Loki is revealed to be the master puppeteer behind everything. And I should have called the other trope, which is reset everything. Because as much as I enjoy like the set design and the production design and the retro look of like the TVA, and I really like Morbius, and Owen Wilson does a good job with his personality, and I like that there's the buddy relationship
Yes.
that you wanted, right? Like, Loki does actually have a friend. We're all being led to believe that it's supposed to be this love interest in Sylvie, when really it's Morbius is his buddy. They're buddy cops.
Yeah.
He even looks like a cop for the last 2 episodes. Like, he's got the
Yeah.
holster for his sword, but it looks like a holster for a sidearm.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I just wish that they would get away from these time travel tropes that we've seen, over and over again in other media, and that they've called out in situations like Endgame, where they're joking about Back to the Future and other Star Trek timey stuff, and they're like, time doesn't work like that. I did like the opening of this episode where they were playing all the clips from different moments in Avengers movies' histories, including the song at the end of Endgame where Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter get their dance in the living room.
Yeah.
I really thought that was a nice kind of sentimental way to say, like, this is going to affect a lot of things. And I haven't seen the trailer yet, mostly because I just saw it advertised and then forgot to click on it. But the What If series is the next thing that's coming to Disney Plus. And I got a feeling that Loki and these crazy timelines that have gone outside of the red line that the TVA says, like, if any timeline deviant, goes past this point, and who knows what could happen. And now they've all gone past that point. So utter chaos is happening. And I feel like that is going to be the excuse that the Marvel Universe can use to do one-off things like the What If series, where Peggy Carter becomes Captain America, where there's zombie Spider-Man, where there's a bunch of different
not
things.
only that, but my other thing is they're going to introduce all of the What If episodes are being introduced by the Watcher.
Oh, so I don't know the Watcher.
Okay, the Watcher is like, think of him as like Doctor Who. He's the last of his species, and he basically sits in a hidden like space station that orbits Earth, because everything seems to revolve around Earth, and he's not allowed to interact with everybody, but he's the guy that records time and all of the things that happen, and he's supposed to be able to see all of the multiverse all at once. Part of me actually wondered if he might be Kang the Conqueror before before they introduced the act. When I saw the actor, I was like, okay, it is going to be Kang. But for a half a second, I was like, what if they just meet the Watcher and he's gone demented? And then I was like, oh no, it's Kang. Okay, we're good. But the Watcher is, he ends up becoming an Avenger, or sort of like an Avenger, because things happen and things go way off script, and he's not supposed to interfere, and he does once in a while, because he needs to get things back on track.
So this is one of the, I thought it looked familiar because I saw a bunch of images like on Google image search about like what he looks like. And I've definitely seen it before, but I mean,
they're shown in a Guardians of the Galaxy, Flash, one of the Stan Lee cameos.
Yeah, one of the Stan Lee cameo stingers at the end. Stan Lee's in a spacesuit, and he's saying, I can't remember what he says, but he's like, if I only had a little bit more time or something. He says something along like that. But the other thing is that true to form with Marvel and DC basically copying each other in the 70s and the 80s, he reminds me of the ring, the power ring guys from Green Lantern. What are they, like the keepers of the ring or the lantern? They created the rings. They're the ones that created the yellow rings and the green rings, and I can't remember their names. Zero nerd cred for me, but he big head, high collar, floaty robes. Looks like he kind of floats above the ground, like that kind of a vibe. definitely comes through. But well, that's
Yeah.
interesting that we'll have that for like as a through point for the What If series. I'm looking forward to that just for one other reason, because it's animated. So that should be a lot of fun. Moving on into the Internet Minute, which is, of course, brought to you by you. If you'd like to support the Citadel Cafe, we are 100% listener supported. If you're getting value out of the show, please consider putting a little bit of value back in. You can become a member at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. Joining at any level will invite you to the member-only Discord server, where you can chat with us in between podcasts. I share that community with my Twitch chat as well as my personal Patreon, so there's quite a few people in there. It's 100 strong at least, which is a good number of nerdy folks. You get access to different kind of roles. You've got bonus episodes, that kind of thing. Patron count is currently at 24, same from last week. I'd love to increase that to at least one a month. So if you'd like to be 25, check out patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. And if you are a patron, if you want to contribute to the show and the show's development, throw a comment in the Town Hall channel on Discord. That is where I'm going to be developing goals for the podcast, trying to figure out what we're going to do in the future. So check it out, patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe, and hopefully we will see you there. My pick this week is Lego. Surprise! It just came out today. As far as the announcement goes, it's going to be available on August 1st. It is the LEGO Volkswagen T2 camper van, creator set 10279. I am not normally a car guy, nor am I a Lego car guy. They usually have too many exposed Technic pieces for me, like the Lamborghinis and stuff that they've made have just not really turned my crank. However, this is a tidy, very cool little retro looking build for the Volkswagen camper van. The foldable, quote unquote foldable beach chairs and the surfboard, along with the pitched roof, are a really nice touch. I like it a lot. It's not a small build either. It's like 13.5 inches long, 6 inches tall, 5 inches wide. Like
That's a lot of parts.
It's a lot of parts. And normally I think of like Lego retail for me in Canada being like anything around like 17 to 18 cents a piece is a pretty good experience. This retails for 180 Canadian, but it's got 2,200 pieces, which means you're looking at around 8 to 9 cents a piece. So this is going to take you a while. The inside is decorated. It's got like a little sink and a bed and a steering wheel, all that kind of stuff. You know, you get the hubcaps and the license plate things, and a lot of pieces rotate. Looks like the sliding door on the side really works. So, again, not a car guy, but just I like the retro design style of it, and I could easily see this sitting on my shelf. And a lot of times sets like this are closer to 300 Canadian. So the fact that it's under $200, which is still a lot for Lego, it looks appealing. Like it's got that like, oh, if I had that kind of disposable income, this would be threatening.
Yeah, this is definitely a sub 200 here in America too. So,
what is your pick this week, sir?
so my pick this week, it's just a little one. Ryan Reynolds and his Deadpool character. He's got a movie coming out later this summer called Free Guy. They were supposed to be out last year, but they keep postponing it. It got shuffled around because of the Fox Disney merger too, because it was originally a Fox movie, if I remember correctly. And it's finally going to be coming to theaters this summer. And so Deadpool is reviewing the trailer of Free Guy, joined by his buddy Korg. And it's a pretty humorous thing. It's Deadpool and Korg sitting on a couch, and they're talking about the trailer. And it is Taika Waititi voicing Korg like he does in the Thor movies. And what's best about it is Taika Waititi is the villain in Free Guy. So that's why they're doing this. It's kind of stunt casting, but it's kind of fun to watch them banter back and forth.
Look, if there's one thing that I've learned is that, like, not only is Ryan Reynolds probably one of my favorite, movie stars right now. I don't love everything he does, but just as a personality, I really enjoy him. He is a brilliant marketer. Like, does not get enough credit for how he can just manipulate everything and get either himself or Deadpool or whatever it is, his aviation gin, like the quote unquote feud that he and Hugh Jackman have online, like just hilarious, but ingenious at the same time. And actually, I'm really looking forward to see if the new movie, I don't remember the name of it, Ryan Reynolds, Gal Gadot, and The Rock Dwayne Johnson.
Yes, coming to Netflix.
Yeah. Now there are three actors that I just like. Again, I don't always love Dwayne Johnson's movies. I like some of them, but I really enjoy him as just a person, just as a human being.
Yep.
All of them are just really cool people that I think are, from what I can tell, I don't know, but as far as Hollywood goes, they seem pretty down to earth, pretty savvy, but also
It's called Red something. I can't remember exactly what it's called.
red
My
tag,
only
red
gripe,
label. Yeah.
yeah, it's like red. It's like Red Zone or Red Tag or yeah. My only gripe with it is they haven't shown us anything of it yet,
Yeah.
and for Netflix to not show us something this long is kind of weird.
Red Notice.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, Red Notice. I agree, and I feel like it might be something that I noticed after watching the Tomorrow War with
Yeah,
Chris Pratt for last
where
week.
they've shown it, they've been shoving it down your throat for like the last 6 months.
Yeah, well, see, this is the thing when you've got a Twitch account and you're also an Amazon Prime member, is that you get the trailer like every time there's a Twitch ad. But
Yep.
the problem with that is that the trailer basically had all the exciting bits in it, and
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I'm kind of glad that anytime a trailer like that happened, I was either muting or skipping the ad, because I actually watched the Tomorrow War having not seen a trailer, and I don't know, like these three actors alone will sell me on a Netflix movie. I will sit down and watch it. I
yeah.
might not finish it if it sucks, but you've got me in on the casting period. I don't necessarily need a trailer because I'm not expecting it to be rocket science. And so
No,
if it's a summer blockbuster with these three personalities in it, I don't need a trailer, because the only thing you can show in a trailer is going to give away half the movie, or at least half the jokes, right? Like, I don't want all of the one-liners from Reynolds in the trailer, because that's what it's
yeah.
going to be, right? I'd rather just experience them organically in the
You
movie.
know what's always a bummer for me is I liked Hitman's Bodyguard,
Yes, me too, actually.
and the sequel's coming out. But you know what kills me about those movies? Outside of North America, so you and I in Canada and here in America, outside of that distribution, those are Netflix movies.
Really?
They go straight to Netflix. Netflix is listed as the executive producer, but here in America, they're Lionsgate.
Hmm.
So that's why we don't get them on Netflix. But the rest of the world does. That does not get a theatrical release outside the U.S. That gets Netflix straight.
Where did I watch The Hitman's Bodyguard? Because I watched it streaming.
Did you?
Yeah. I don't know whether it was on Netflix eventually. Like, it wasn't day
It
and
was
date.
on Netflix. It was on Netflix at one point.
Oh, that's probably
but
what it
it
was then.
it's like day and date with Netflix outside the U.S.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And I only know that because somebody sent me a copy because I was trying to get a hold of that movie at one point, and someone sent me a their copy, and on the disc that they sent me, it was like, this is a Netflix movie, and I was like, that's weird.
I guess you get kind of a funny experience in North America where, I mean, a lot of stuff is just kind of big Hollywood theatrical releases for the US. Canada being so close to US in terms of culture, just kind
Sometimes
of.
you guys don't, sometimes you do. It's
Yeah,
weird.
it is strange. Yeah, well, that's because the copyright stuff is weird up here too. That's the other thing. The Tomorrow War, which I talked about last week, it really felt like a direct to streaming movie. It did not feel like a
Yep.
theatrical movie. I'm not saying it was bad. I'm just saying it felt like
There's a quality difference.
I don't know what a quality. Well, yeah, the quality difference in the writing. I think it's the fact that it just felt like maybe there isn't enough investment off the start to really get things honed down. They're not
Yeah.
riding on ticket sales, butts and seats in theaters, because
My
they can just distribute it worldwide on Amazon Prime and be just like, everyone can see it, so why
My
not, right?
only my biggest gripe with a lot of streaming like Netflix movies or Amazon movies is I feel like they need better editors because they know that
Yeah,
they don't they let things go on sometimes. The movie could be done in 90 minutes. They let it go on for 2.5 hours,
you're
and it's
right.
like, you could have cut 30 minutes out of this thing and I wouldn't have noticed.
Or go the route of Stranger Things and turn the Tomorrow War into a 6-episode miniseries.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yep.
that would sit better with me. You'd be able to get more character development. Some of the big drops in the Tomorrow War would be probably cooler on like episode 5. You know, like you find out that, I mean, spoiler, I told about this last week, but like the commander that he goes to the future to work with is his daughter. And you find that out kind of like in the middle of the movie. But it would have been really cool to have that be something that you discover like in episode 3 or 4 or something like that. So there are some pacing issues I find. I agree. But see, because the Tomorrow War for me, quality wise, still felt like Stranger Things. And Stranger Things is a high production TV show. It's very, very good. I really like that show. And the Tomorrow War felt like that, but it just didn't feel like a Hollywood blockbuster for whatever reason. And I think I mentioned it last week, is that it feels like probably there's some restrictions and some things that they couldn't help filming and producing and putting out a movie during COVID, I think probably changes a lot of things logistically. And we might just be entering into this new realm of some or a lot of movies being released either day and date on streaming or just on streaming alone, that are bringing in big Hollywood talent, people that bring in big numbers in the theaters. And we might just be going through a growing phase where these films just have to prove themselves. We just need one. We need one that's going to do gangbusters. And then everybody was like, okay, now we know we can make this much money with this kind of film that's just released on streaming. And then the next, set of movies that are produced are going to have a lot higher investment and stuff like that. I'd be curious to see how it shakes out, because if you ask me, everybody wins, because then you've got an audience that has better access. You've got families that can stay home and watch it. People that can go to the movie theaters and want to go to the movie theaters still can, provided everything is back to normal as far as health and safety. Like, it just provides more options. And I think that the audience is not used to that, and neither are the investors in the movies. Now, I'm not an executive producer. I don't know all the ins and outs, but that's what I get from just kind of following the industry for podcasts and stuff, is that it just feels like a stretching point for media, and we're going to settle somewhere. We just don't really know where that's going to be on the other side.
Well, only the future can tell.
Well, speaking of time, that wraps up this episode of the Citadel Cafe. You can get more information about the show and links to some of the things that Lou and I talked about at thecitadelcafe.com. Music for the show was composed by Kevin MacLeod. You can email us at thecitadelcafe@gmail.com or find us by name on Twitter. Subscribe for free on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, even YouTube. Word of mouth is the easiest way to support the show. Just tell a friend about the Citadel Cafe and where they can go to listen to it. My name is Joel Duggan. You can find everything I'm doing online, including my illustration and design portfolio, at joelduggan.com. Check out my other podcast all about Minecraft at thespawnchunks.com, where this week we're going to be talking about the massive 1.18 experimental snapshot that was released yesterday on the show. It is really quite something to behold. So check that out at thespawnchunks.com next Monday. Today, I will point you towards twitch.tv/JoelDuggan, where I'm streaming cool games like Before We Leave, more Minecraft, probably even that experimental snapshot, as well as a bunch of other things. So check that out at Joel Duggan on Twitch. Lou, where can people find you online?
Easiest place to find me is under the name Busy Zombie Lord on all the social media that matters. And you can check out my podcast, Zombies Ate My Podcast, where we just wrapped up talking about the Resident Evil series that just showed up on Netflix.
You've been listening to the Citadel Cafe, where we are fast, easy, and cheap, but you've run out of time.